Hey there, quick announcement. We are going to do another letters episode after the New Adventures in Hi-Fi episode. However, we're going to be recording that episode well before the New Adventures in Hi-Fi episode comes out. I know it's confusing. So, if you're listening to this and you have anything that you want to write in about R.E.M. as a band, about albums that we have discussed in the past, or, maybe even stuff in the future, go to Duckfeed.tv/contact and send us your emails. Go back and listen to the previous episode about Dead Letter Office to hear how that works. It's a lot of fun. We want to hear your thoughts about this band because we like it. We like the band, but we also want to hear how you like it too, or don't. All of that. So, Duckfeed.tv/contact is the place to go. The deadline for that is June the 28th. So a week after this episode comes out. Once again, Duckfeed.tv/contact.
This is Gary Butterfield.
This is Cole Ross.
And this is File Underwater, the show where we try to convince you that Automatic for the People belongs on the top 100 album list of the 90s.
Controversial opinions all around.
Yeah, it's the...
Gary, I cannot tell you how many bricks I've had thrown through my front windows because of the things you say at the front of these. I don't know why they're coming to me instead of you.
It's because we have a very small, very passionate fan base of like 30 guys who listen to the show and really care.
Yeah.
And then literal infinite people who are just like, I assume, don't listen, but do agree with what I say at the beginning.
Okay, yeah.
They just listen to the beginning and they stop.
Right. Yeah. But like you alluded to, this time we are talking about Automatic for the People, which is the album that R.E.M. released on October 5th of 1992. Again, hitting those election years. Yeah,
this is a big one.
Yep.
And it's weird to say, mid-period R.E.M. Like we're in mid, like I always think of this as like late, moving into late R.E.M.
Mm-hmm.
We're still now we are in mid-period R.E.M.
Yeah, this is this is right before the end of Act 2, or it's the middle.
Yes.
It's the middle of Act 2, let's say.
Yes. Yeah, and it's a lot like Tyranny, where like Act 3 is really short. It's like just 2 albums, and it's so it's we're getting there.
Yep,
we're getting there. But this is a big deal. A lot of people who are only casual fans of the band know this album and like this album. Like I feel like this is the album that if you have one R.E.M. album in your collection, it's most likely to be this or Out of Time.
Yeah,
but probably this. Like
most likely
inescapable.
Most likely this. The book that I'm reading, Remarks Are Remembered, made the remark that like this is one of those albums that sold to people who didn't really buy albums. It was like what's that joke about Frampton Comes Alive? Like just every white person's house came with it.
Yes.
Yeah.
You have like 6 albums,
right? And
this is one of them. The little special meta report. This is the last album covered by my oral history. So this is the last time I'm going to have stories because those Athens scenesters, don't care after this point.
they fully abandoned them around the time of Monster. Like,
I'm switching boats to Perfect Circle.
Yeah.
But I haven't started reading it yet.
Yeah.
So.
Well, in fairness, most of those scenesters were only around as long as Mike Mills had his appendix.
Yeah.
They were really only fans of Mike Mills' appendix.
Like, who isn't? He's like Phantom X.
Yeah.
Like his secondary mutation are all these external organs.
Yep.
Man, that's a great idea for like Fury Road 2. Like you have one person hooked up to all these different people. Like a spider web out of them, and each one their organ is acting for him. So like this person is my heart, this person is my liver. This person is my lungs, and I'm just like
that. So like that string of sentences you just said started really kind of like romantic and resonant, and immediately took a turn for the grisly.
This person is my breath. This person is my pancreas. Hi, I'm Pancreas.
I'm Pancreas Pete. Well, that's a strange coincidence that your name is Pete.
It's my job and my name.
I don't understand why these are also dinosaur helpers from the Flintstones. It's a living.
I assume that it's not a great job. That happens in That's in the basement of that cultist compound in Dark Corners of the Earth. Actually,
Oh yeah,
there's a thing where somebody is hooked up to machines, but I'm saying, what if those machines were people?
right.
Like in Fury Road.
Oh, of course.
Everything is human powered.
Yeah. Or like Peter Thiel. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. This album can be less like Fury Road.
It's very chill. It's very low key. And in the rumblings leading up to this, I think that I sounded more negative on it than I actually ended up being. But yeah, let's get into it.
Yeah, it's a real middle boy for me.
Yeah.
Like it is when I listened to it, I was like, I loved it and loved it and loved it. And then like going back to it, I'm like, it's good. That I think that softness doesn't serve it entirely. I would much prefer like greater texture.
Yes.
To this record and the next record.
Yeah.
Like
this is uniform in a way that Monster is not. I think that the highs are much, much higher in this one
than in Monster.
Yeah.
I think the lows are higher too.
Okay.
And this than Monster. Monster has and we'll get to it. Like we're doing a whole episode on it. We're recording it right after this. Be patient. But like there's I think that both the albums have a certain kind of one notishness. I think this is more one notey than Monster.
Yeah.
But they're both pretty samey as you kind of move through them, and that's a bummer. And it's kind of interesting because it was an accident. That turned out that way. Monster is by design. This is kind of a weird accident. There's a couple of like interesting bits of trivia. The one that I read, so originally, you got in the notes that it originally wanted to be called Unforgettable. Thank God they didn't call it that.
That was a Peter Buck joint. So Peter Buck, I think, batting, let's say 0 on titles.
Yeah, he's not great. And I've read that it was going to be called Star at some point.
Okay.
Which I like more.
Yeah, Star's better, but it's also not it's not as distinct. I think Automatic for the People is a really good name.
I think it's their best album title.
Oh yeah.
Like I think this album title is great.
Yeah.
The story behind it's great. Like the phrasing is great. Like I love it. Like I think this is their greatest album title.
Yeah.
That's we should go back. I'm not going to do it, but we should go back and do the intro where we try to convince you that Automatic for the People is the best album title.
Is the best album title. Do you want me to put a little bit of stereo separation on that so it sounds like it's coming from over in the corner?
I've got a little Bluetooth speaker for listening to music.
Okay.
And when I have it hooked up while listening to music, sometimes I'll take these pictures of asking Roars if he wants to get a cold one. And when I play them back, it comes from the Bluetooth speaker and it destroys Roars' brain. Like he can't handle my voice and his voice coming from the other side of the room where there's nothing there. It's really funny. Like he cannot handle it.
Yeah. I'm gonna need some footage of that if you can.
I've got to figure out a way to take footage of it because it has to be while I'm playing the video. So I'll need to play the video and get somebody else to take footage of him or something. But like, it's really funny. Like it's opens up the doors of perception. It's very funny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Star would have been an okay title. Unforgettable. No, thank you. The name is inspired by the slogan for this soul food restaurant in Athens called Weaver D's. And I love this. There's this great, just such a Mike Mills quote when he was talking about, it just feels like our approach to music. And here's his quote. It's like, here's some songs and we hope that you like them.
Oh. Special boy.
Here, we made this for you. You can like them or not. It's fine.
I love the story of them doing this title, because they've gone there. They're legit. Like they supported this place. They loved it. And they decided they wanted to call it that. And you can read about in Watch, like there's a little like micro documentary about the making of this. That is the members of R.E.M. talking about the album intercut with Dexter Weaver, the proprietor of Weaver D's Fine Foods, talking about the experience of like getting asked and how the origins of the name and stuff. And he seems like the nicest, best dude.
He so does. Like this is a person who has just mastered like this restaurateur's kind of patter. And just like hospitality, like the whole way down. Like I was wrapped by this guy just like telling these stories as he was hauling around these things of wings.
And they did this. There's this whole thing where they sell peanuts out of theirs, and they became this like collector's item. Yeah. So like peanut, because they said Automatic for the People on them. So like eventually, they had them in auction and stuff where people were like, buying these $5 bags of peanuts. Yeah. for 30, 40, 60, $70.
Right.
Because they're R.E.M. fans. I think that restaurant's still around, and I've thought about before, like, a couple like toury things I'd want to do if I had just dumb money. Mm-hmm. And one of them would be to go to Athens and go look at a bunch of Athens shit.
Oh yeah.
And it'd be great to go to this restaurant and just like,
someone in our Slack shared an AV Club article that was like a tour of the sacred R.E.M. sites of Athens. Yeah, which would be, but that would be cool. Like, Georgia's awesome. Like, flying into Atlanta and then going there would be really fun.
I think so too.
Yeah.
I want to do that, and then I want to do the Gabriel Knight tour and go do all the things from Gabriel Knight 1.
Of course.
But yeah, he seems really, really great. And I recommend people watch that because it's very charming.
Yeah. But the story is like you would go to this restaurant and order something, and then everybody there would say automatic.
Yep.
As they go for it. Like, and on one hand, it doesn't make a lot of sense, but on the other hand, it makes perfect sense. And it also, like, automatic for the people being wrapped up in this, it does sound very political. Like, on its face, before you realize that it's them having lifted it from a restaurant.
That's a nice phrase.
Yeah.
Something to make note of, kind of moving forward here in the band, is that we've been for the show been spoiled by these 25th anniversary albums, and we have now bypassed that. So we know some stuff about the makings of these records and kind of like, how many songs they worked with and how many things they cut it down from. Mm-hmm. But we haven't been able to hear those songs or demos until, R.E.M. has released them. Mm-hmm. And, they haven't released a lot of them. Like, this is a point where the band has been a little bit more private moving on from here. And bootleggers have not done a good job.
No.
Of sneaking into the R.E.M. compound and stealing this shit.
Well, a lot of those bootlegs were done from live performances, and for Out of Time and for Automatic for the People, there were no performances really.
Well, so I mean, not the demo ones weren't, like the demo cuts were because some of those were R.E.M. released all those for Out of Time, but prior to that, for like Green and Document and stuff, somebody just got their hands on them, and I don't know how they did that.
Right.
Whoever that hero hamburglar is, like he needs to hamburger some shit up for us. Yeah. But if you love this album this year, the 25th anniversary is coming out, and based on all the ones leading up to that, that's definitely the version of this album to get, because there'll definitely be some cool secrets.
Yeah, I'm way into it. So we're going to be making reference, a lot of this stuff. If it is going to pop up, it will either be from the fan club, like we started talking about last week or last episode, or it will be stuff that made its way to In Time. Which is their kind of big collection of both singles and then also rarities that came out in like 2003. But then like after that, for Around the Sun and on, we're back to being SOL.
Yeah, and there's some B-sides and there's some compilation appearances, things like that.
Yeah.
But just if you like that, because I mean, I don't know how much it appeals to people who listen, but I like hunting that stuff down because it's like, hey, here's 5 or 6 R.E.M. songs I've never heard. Mm-hmm. That's really fun. The fan club has done that a little bit for me because I'd only probably heard maybe a third of those prior to this.
Yeah.
But so we're not going to get that peek into this creative process. We can only read about it.
Right.
So let's get into that creative process for this record.
Yeah. So when we were talking about Out of Time and the production of that, we made an allusion to the fact that they had this kind of fifth member in Peter Holsapple from the DBs. Who they had on and who actually like freed them up to do some different arrangements, right? He was their kind of swing instrumentalist. And Peter Holsapple was let go prior to making Automatic for the People, and that actually shaped the composition of this album. And the reason he was let go was kind of just over money stuff. Like the 4 main members, we've kind of lauded them for being this single unit that split proceeds and songwriting evenly, but a result of that is that they are this, again, this closed unit like they are. And so they were not willing to let a 5th person in and say like, hey, you are officially an R.E.M.
Right.
Yeah. And so like
and you can see that being a slap in the dick.
Yeah.
Like that being pretty frustrating. Like, hey, I've been like working on and writing these songs and writing parts, and like I feel like I have some ownership over this. I've been playing these shows with you at your promotional things. Why can't I be an R.E.M.?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so like they even say as much, there were some quotes that were like, yes, it's frustrating, but it's just the way that we are and just the way that we work. And how much that resonates with you or how much you think that is a good kind of excuse or explanation is going to vary person for person. but like,
well, yeah,
it does suck for Peter Holsapple, who like contributed and helped make Out of Time, you know, kind of the album that it was.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a bummer. The complete story is not really out there as you know, as far as if there's bad blood,
right,
and the like that isn't mentioned. But it's a bummer.
Yeah.
So they went into without Peter, with only one Peter. It's no Peters Club. We can have one.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
They're working. Once they started making their album, they have this rehearsal studio where they wrote these songs. And their kind of schedule was they'd record for, rehearse and write songs for 3 weeks, take 1 week off per month. And when they set out to do this, they initially started wanting to make a rock album.
Yes.
I don't know if that popped up in your notes, but like they were like, hey, Out of Time was real wussy. Like, let's go crazy. Let's do something hard rock. And it just wasn't working.
No.
Like those songs just weren't very good. They came up with some, but they had like a half dozen, not enough for a record. And they didn't like them that much. They, put together like 30 or 40 songs for this, some of which were those rock songs. But because that wasn't working, they decided to kind of go with this other approach.
Right. This other approach that continued the acoustic instrumentation from Out of Time. Again, like they had not so much settled on writing songs on their own kind of assigned instruments, right? They were still, working with Buck on a mandolin and with, Bill Berry on bass and Mike Mills on keyboard, and then eventually going back to whatever they needed to with the, with the recording. And Michael Stipe wasn't really involved at all. Like,
no, they finished the demos and didn't give them to him for half a year.
Right.
They gave him to the beginning. This came out in 1992. They gave the demos to Michael Stipe at the beginning of 92.
Right. And he got this and he was like, what the fuck did you guys just give me?
Yeah, I think he thinks it's weirder than it is.
Yeah.
Like every member of the band, when they're writing about this album or like talking about this album, is like, yeah, it's actually really weird. It doesn't sound weird to me at all.
No.
Like it's way too, and maybe what is weird about it is like some of these, like, yeah, it has all these weird organs on it. And it's like, that's just an organ.
Yeah.
I don't know what you're talking about. Like,
right.
There's some weird instrumentation, but the structures and stuff do not particularly sound weird to me.
Right. Yeah. And like, we're not going to get into some like really weird shit again until Monster, again.
Yeah.
Like,
Monster has some weird stuff on it.
Yeah. Like, and that was entirely deliberate on, on their part. So it's hard to understand where that's coming from. It's also hard to understand, or hard to discern if that is just a function of like, hey, Automatic for the People has kind of always been.
Yeah.
And so like, we
like
know
Seinfeld.
Exactly. Yeah. Like this has kind of always been a date. Not always, like came out in your lifetime, came out in my lifetime, but like we understand and have internalized it as part of the arc,
Yes.
But even listening to it paired up next to Out of Time, you can see the line between the two of them on everything, I think, except subject matter. And even then, sometimes that.
Yeah. They make the albums make really interesting kind of like links of a chain, looking at one after the other up until Up.
Right.
Where there's that definitive breakpoint, which we'll talk about at length and is really interesting. But up until that point, like this makes sense to talk about in relation to Out of Time and in relation to Monster. Monster makes sense to talk about in relation to this and into New Adventures. And kind of previously working back as well.
Right.
Like they all make sense after one another. I think that this with Out of Time, this is getting more into talking about the music than the production, but that thought made me think, like, I think this is, as far as two albums next to each other, is the most samey they've kind of been.
Right.
Like Out of Time is different, but they are both kind of sleepy adult contempo albums. Like, I don't think they've really done two in a row that are quite this samey.
No, like you could probably make a little bit of an argument for like a Pageant to not Pageant, From Fables to Pageant for like parts of it, but not for the entire thing. Yeah,
Fables it feels really different than Pageant to me. Like at least more different than Out of Time to Automatic does.
Yeah.
To me, it's just kind of a weird thing, and it's not a function, as far as I can tell, of the songs being written at the same time.
No.
It's like they just sat down to write another batch of, these kind of dirgy numbers for the most part.
Yeah. And like there's this kind of myth around the album that like, hey, this was again them writing this while they were miserable. It's a little bit of that Fables kind of symptom or syndrome. But like the only person who I can see who was actually really in a bad way was Buck, right? So Peter Buck was divorced. He was drinking a lot. He was gaining weight. Like, by all outward appearances, he was kind of falling apart.
Yeah.
And
that
even
Peter Buck is my favorite Peter Buck. It's like how you have a favorite with Buddhas. Like the fat buck.
Yeah. But it's like he was miserable, and he was like living out of his car even though he didn't have to, and he would go, like, he disappeared for 6 months to Mexico, hot on the heels of releasing their most successful album. Like, he was in a really rough way. And if you believe what Peter Buck says, Bill Berry was also kind of struggling with the success, right? Which is a real thing.
Yeah.
Hard to be sympathetic toward, but it's a real thing.
It's a real thing. Like, yeah, it's one of those things where it's like, it is hard to be sympathetic towards, and rightly so. Mm-hmm. It's just the everybody, it's all relational.
Right.
It's all relative, because, like, guys, like, success is hard. It's a different kind of hard.
Right.
It's novel. Yeah. Buck could also be, or Barry rather, was also the person who I can imagine being kind of the most bummed out by this, because he really wanted to do that rock album.
Yeah.
And for the next album, he puts his foot down.
Yes.
That's one of those, like, quotes that shows up in everything.
Which is, if we do another acoustic album, I'm going to leave the band.
Yeah, like, we have to actually be a rock band, because this kind of sucks.
Right. Yeah, the drummer gets the shit end of that. Like, do I even need to be here?
Totally. I'm going to play tambourine during the song. Not a percussionist.
Right. Check my job description, Holmes.
Yeah.
Or I guess Holt.
But hey, Holt Slice.
But yeah, so, like, there's this kind of story that there's a cloud of misery over this entire album, but, like, Michael Stipe wasn't going through a bunch of shit at this time. Like,
they were mostly fine.
Yeah, like Mike Mills was pretty much just kind of being
smiling politely.
Yep, smiling, exactly.
I think that, and also when they've talked about it, they've been like, they like the album, and they've also said that it was pretty smooth. Mm-hmm. This process.
Yeah.
And part of the reason why they're having this bad time, part of the reason why it was so kind of frictionless, is because they decided not to go on tour again.
Right.
So they recorded all over. They did a couple of very rare promo things. Specifically, there's one they did a Greenpeace benefit show that at the 40 Watt Club. I tried to find a complete bootleg of and couldn't.
Right.
I'm sure that was bootlegged.
Yeah.
But I couldn't find it. But, like, rare, performances from this era are kind of rare. There are songs on this album that were probably only played that night and never made their way onto live sets, or if they did, they got, like, unearthed in, like, 2008.
Right.
Or something like that. But, like, 2 albums not touring is a pretty big deal.
Yeah.
That's a long time.
It's a very long time, and that probably contributed a lot to well, I mean, we're going to talk about that a lot next episode. Man, it's really hard not to talk about Monster along with this.
Yeah, it's very paired with it. And then when we get to New Adventures, like, New Adventures was literally recorded on that tour, so
right.
It will be hard not to talk about those in pairing too. But it's all fine.
Yeah, it's all fine. So instead of touring, like, they actually just went around the U.S., fulfilled their desire to travel, and then just recorded in a bunch of different studios in a bunch of different cities.
Yes. Yeah. So they did the initial demos at John Keene's place in Athens, and some of those are on the album.
Right.
So, like, specifically Drive is that demo, the bass and drums from that, and some other parts actually made it onto the album. So there's kind of this DNA from all these locations they recorded that ended up in the record.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And Scott Lidd was, like, following them around and doing his whole thing with them. They did overdubs for Drive, and they also did some instrumentals in New Orleans. And then they also did their backing tracks, most of those in Bearsville in New York State, around Woodstock.
Yeah. Some more overdubs at Criteria Studios in Miami, where everybody except for Michael Stipe kind of hung out at the beach all day. Like, this is just them taking a this is like fucking Adam Sandler making really movies.
Yeah.
and like the band kind of did this instead of touring. To me, that, like, is that doesn't really fulfill the purpose of a tour.
No, it doesn't.
It sounds nice for very nice that this is kind of a rock star move. It feels like to me
a little bit,
which is fine. That's fine. Like, you guys have the money, you spend it however you want. Mm-hmm. But like
they were not doing this to get out there and connect with fans in different geographies.
Yeah. And tellingly, in the oral history book, that comes up a lot.
Yeah.
Like, the last chapter is actually pretty kind. I was expecting it to be more bitter just because of how bitter it's been. Kind of as I read it, but like it's mostly people who are just like, yeah, like you guys got a tour, like, you're starting to get disconnected from people, and not just these people who are like, ostensibly your friends who you guys don't actually like, that much, or like on and off, but like you guys are kind of getting disconnected. You guys have to be a band.
Right.
It doesn't feel like a band anymore.
And then on the other side of that, you have kind of this, I don't know, history that is written about it. Again, the story that forms, which is like, well, the Beatles decided to stop touring and they made Sgt. Pepper's.
Yeah.
It's like,
which like it makes sense in retrospect, but like,
right.
At the time I could see it being very unsatisfying.
Yeah. And also frustrating, for somebody who might live in Chicago and never have a chance to see them, even though they are producing kind of this work that more people than ever are hearing.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Something that I think is really cool, and what I think actually works well on this, much better than it actually should, is the strings. Normally, like the added strings are either unnoticed or they are obnoxious, but they got John Paul Jones, the bassist and keyboardist from Led Zeppelin, to kind of arrange the string parts in Atlanta and put them on four songs that would end up being the singles off of this. And I was very happy that the two books that I read to prepare for this made the same comparison, that John Paul Jones is the Mike Mills of Led Zeppelin.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
It does.
And the strings here don't contribute to feeling overproduced, which is the big problem with strings. Right. Like bring in the strings, like a lot of times, like, okay, guys, like it's not Pet Sounds, like, but it actually works here. They're pretty understated. And it's interesting to have like, oh, that was a person who did that, and this is why that sounds so good.
Yes.
Like it is a weird thing to say, like, oh, John Paul Jones is a good string arrangement guy. And I know that, and I can tell the difference between him and a bad string arrangement guy. Once that was all done, they ended up doing their mixing in Seattle, where Peter Buck eventually would live.
Yeah.
And
there's this kind of slow diaspora away from Athens. So Peter Buck has been kind of buying up homes wherever they've gone. Like he bought an apartment in New York, he bought a house in New Orleans, and he eventually bought a house in Seattle. And I think that's still where he lives to this day. But yeah, he moved away. We're going to find out that Bill Berry has also moved out of Athens, like bought a farm, not bought the farm like a lot of people thought he would, but bought a farm.
But a farm where eventually he will live.
Yes.
Yeah. So initially, this was kind of a risk. They always put out work that they're proud of.
At least in the moment. After 2 years, they turn on and say it's the worst thing.
Yeah, they end up getting very dismissive. But at least initially, they like the things they've done. But they're a little worried about this, at least as far as the reception. Just because it was like, it's their second super sleepy acoustic number, and nothing goes over 100 BPM on the whole record. And they're just like, we might sell a couple million. We're not going to really sell anything. And instead it went like quadruple platinum and double platinum in 2 months, and triple platinum in Australia, and like sextuple platinum in Britain.
Yeah.
It's something ridiculous. Like, and those are millions of units sold. Like every platinum, that's the conversion chart. Like
right.
A platinum is 1 million records.
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously their most successful thing to date, and I think Monster only like barely outsold it.
Yeah.
And it was critically received very well as well. Like, people were lauding this as, them at the height of their powers. And like, it was to the point where like, even Peter Buck was like, we might need to break up the band, because I don't know that we can do better than this in terms of like actual, let's say, objective measures of success, either critical acclaim or money.
Yes. Yeah. And the interesting thing about Monster selling better, because like critically, and this is not me dragging Monster into it and doing Monster thoughts, but like critically, this is considered a better album than Monster. Like, yes. Monster doesn't have the best critical reputation. If that outsold this, it's a tour, like the biggest tour they've ever done, supported it. Yeah. And you sell a lot of records at a tour, and you sell a lot of records in advance of a tour. Like that is one reason you go on tour. Yeah. Is to sell records. So like that, without that tour, I would be surprised if it was the same. That album was well received, but this is on a different scale as far as like reception and and especially like kind of its place in history. Like this pops up, and I say this as somebody who's kind of a fair weather fan of this album, but like this comes up a lot.
Yes.
from the band, from other people, that this is the prestige record.
Yeah, like they made jokes about it on Parks and Rec.
Yeah,
like it's definitely on there. Their gambit and going with Warner for their label after they left IRS kind of paid off at this point. They gotten a lot of distribution on Green and Out of Time, but like Warner's international arm was so strong that they actually ended up selling more in Britain than they did in the US. So like this is an inversion that I think is going to hold true for the rest of R.E.M's career as a band that is working together and releasing albums.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So R.E.M. About Town, this is obviously hugely successful. There's no tour to talk about, but they did really well with the band. This is kind of when these ugly rumors started coming out that Michael Stipe had AIDS or cancer or was going to star in Powder 2, Back from the Attic or something like that. Like,
Powder 2 strikes again.
Yeah. Just because he is like a super like waifishly thin, and it is when he had very short hair, and he's kind of like not going bald gracefully here, which he would fully embrace with Monster when he first shaved his head. But this is when he was, same thing happened to Billy Corgan.
Right.
Where his hair was kind of thinning out and it kind of looks like he's sickly, but really it's just male pattern baldness.
Right. And he's always been gangly. He's always been, he's always been a little bit reclusive. That went to kind of 10 with this though, when he decided, I'm not going to be the face of this. I'm not going to do any interviews. I'm just not going to kind of appear in public at all. So people thought that he was like sick and dying in bed while everybody else was touring to support this album.
Yeah. Or they weren't touring; they were like doing.
Stuff. So I guess that's what I mean. Yeah. Like out there, talking to people in a way that Michael Stipe wasn't. And I think that it was like, so Bill Berry didn't go out either, and so it was just Buck and Mills, out there saying like, "Hey guys, buy this. I think it's pretty cool."
Yeah, fighting crime. And this was it's hard to for people today and for people younger than me, and I don't know how much this was a thing when you were growing up. But do you remember like when AIDS was everywhere as a thing, like doing like AIDS units in school, seeing ads for AIDS, like, and I'm not saying this to minimize AIDS at all. Like it has gotten much more treatable. Like it is objectively less of a big deal now in America with that, big caveat than it was because it is more treatable. It's not necessarily a death sentence. At the time, like AIDS was everywhere.
Yeah.
And that's why people were just like, oh, Michael Stipe's got AIDS.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he seems like he's probably kind of queer. He's got AIDS, and that was what people thought.
Yeah.
Going into it.
This was fueled by the British tabloids as well. Like that was the primary engine for this, and nobody knows exactly where it came forward. I was at the tail end of that. Like we did AIDS units all through high school, in addition to like regular STD kind of things, but I kind of missed, I was 14 when 9/11 happened. So like the big fear that would strike and define my, our generation's entire outlook, shifted over like right at the most vulnerable time. So like it's never been the pandemic or the plague, definitely not kind of the sweeping cultural force or boogeyman. For me, that it that it was even for you, somebody who was born.
Yeah, for me, like it very much was for me. Like growing up, like I was, like by the time 9/11 happened, I was like, psh. I lived through AIDS as a virgin. As a for most of the time,
as a virgin.
Like,
yeah.
I got the battle. Well, I don't have the battle scars, but the but that was the thing I was supposed to be scared of.
Right.
So, obviously it came out, and this they decided mostly just to not address this,
right?
Which I think is kind of ballsy. Like there's no denials or anything. And it was very smart because they realized like, oh, if I do a press conference, it'd be like, I don't have AIDS. Everyone's going to be like, oh, what's he hiding? He protests too much.
Right.
So they're just like, this does not, they literally said, and this is like something that I want to get better at. Like everyone should get better at, especially in online communication. Like if something doesn't dignify a response, actually don't respond to it.
Right.
Like, you did the equivalent of mute and move on.
Mm-hmm. There were a couple times where Mills or Buck were asked about this, and they're like, "Oh, don't be fucking kidding me!" Like, they expressed kind of indignation at it, which who knows? Like, just rumors are fucking crazy, and they do not actually respond to fact, right?
Yes. Yeah. There's no real way to deny somebody who doesn't actually care what you think.
Right.
You know, like if the idea is, you know, hey, like if they're not actually asking, you know, they've already made up their mind.
Right. This had the effect of, you know, right as this band was getting incredibly popular, you know, kind of outing him to a really large audience. It was kind of a, hey, nobody really talks about this, like it doesn't really matter kind of thing in the scene is the sense that I got. But you know, now that they are a number one selling band, you know, Michael Stipe, who didn't want that to really be part of his story or part of his conversation, kind of had questions and discussions about his sexuality and his, you know, sexual life, kind of forced on him, you know, which for somebody who's as introverted as him, is, and for anybody really, is a shitty thing to have happen, to be inadvertently outed like that.
And it coincides kind of with him becoming less introverted and more open about that stuff.
Yeah.
In a way that isn't just in interviews, but trickles into the work, you know, and that's, you know, in this album, not particularly. In the next album, there are like just like songs straight up about sex, which is not really an R.E.M thing.
No.
And lots of them.
The next album is straight up a response to that.
Yeah. So it's lyrically, it's kind of an interesting response. Again, we'll get to this. Like, but it's an interesting response because it's both him owning it and distancing himself, because it's their first like character-based record since Fables.
Right.
Where like a lot of these songs are written from perspectives of not Michael Stipe, because it's about identity and distance, but it's also about dick and like having a dick, doing things with dicks, like Dicks All Bound. And he kind of does both. Like the lyrics to that are very easy to trace based on what's coming out of his life. You know, what's happening in Michael Stipe's life? Right. Dick, Kurt Cobain died, and identity issues. Let's make an album about it, you know?
These rumors were kind of fueled by the fact that a lot of the songs on Automatic for the People are about death and mortality and passage, are kind of the three watchwords for this. And it was also made incredibly, you know, some gasoline was thrown on the fire by the way that Freddie Mercury handled his AIDS diagnosis and his passing, by denying it up until like literally the day that he died in what was it, 1991 or 1992. So it was this weird kind of stars lining up kind of thing.
Yes. Yeah. So the band is still political. Right. This is an election year. So they ended up like kind of working with the Clinton campaign and Al Gore, and Al Gore at a rally quotes them, kinda.
he uses so he read a one sheet with a couple of bullet points about this band.
Yes.
And gets up in front of a rally in Georgia and says, George Bush is out of time and Bill Clinton and Al Gore are automatic for the people.
And then I scream, Out of Time's a better album from the audience, and it ruins his whole point, and Bush gets elected.
Yep, and then I scream, actually, Automatic for the People hasn't proven to be a bestseller yet, so what are you doing?
It's
Out of Time is the biggest thing in the entire world.
Yeah. Have you heard Losing My Religion, sir? Like, and, you know, you got in the notes that, like, Peter Buck was just like, this is ridiculous because Tipper Gore is a monster. Not a monster, but like Tipper Gore sucks.
Yeah, Tipper Gore was, I mean, she was the person who was running like the crusade against specifically like rap music and thrash, trying to get the saying like, oh, just put these voluntary labels on and then we can pass legislation against it. It was like just it was a real kind of like witch hunt kind of thing.
In the oral history books, there's a lot of people, you know, a lot of these Athens folk who had that attitude too. And it's amazing how this like echoes right now. Like there's all these people who are just like, yeah, you can't support them. Like they're monsters. And like Michael Stipe, who is closer to my opinion about it as like, you know, not a centrist, but a more pragmatic person, is just like, hey, like it or not, I have this power. This is the most practical thing to do. Yeah. Like people will do what I tell them to do. Like whatever, right, wrong, or whatever. Like that's just the truth of the matter, is I have this power. Yeah. You know, George Bush would be a nightmare.
Yep, we can't have Reagan term 4.
Yeah, so let me get these compromises in, right. You know, and I will endorse them, and with my full support, because otherwise, you know, and it's like, wow, that's wow, you know, that is so prescient to what's happening now, what just happened in 2016, and even, you know, discussions and stuff I see today, you know, and it's just like, man, that's why these are my boys. because it's not like, I'm sure that Michael Stipe is not like into the Clintons,
right?
You know, but the alternative was like literal Hellmouth. So, and Hellmouth, 1992 Hellmouth, which was not a Hellmouth, it was like a Heckmouth. And then now we're in Hellmouth.
Yeah.
So, like, you know,
yeah. The Nightmare Zone was just a blip on the horizon. Yeah.
Yeah. No, this was like the slightly bad, like the sleeping while with indigestion zone, and now we're at the actual like literal nightmare realm. So
yeah. So I can understand like music people like it's totally on brand for Peter Buck to say fuck you to anything related to Tipper Gore, no matter how much he agreed that Bush was shitty, and like Peter Buck was let's say complicit in Ignoreland, so he's not he doesn't disagree with Michael Stipe.
He's still went with it. There's Peter Buck, like it's funny because Michael Stipe is the one who has the reputation for like this kind of wearing a mask and like this characterhood and stuff, but Peter Buck does that just as much.
Oh yeah.
Like, like I'm gonna wear pajamas this year. Like he's such a like he's a secret Michael Stipe.
Yeah.
He's just a different flavor of it. They're both two sides of the same coin as far as like trying on identities and being very careful about how they present themselves.
Yeah. Being very self-conscious. Full stop.
Yes. Yeah. And in a non-loaded way, and in a very specific to what those words mean way, not like how we commonly use self-conscious, which is just like, I feel kind of bad because I'm the center of attention.
Yeah.
Like very conscious of their self, at all times.
Yeah. Whereas the rhythm section's over there talking about who's going to do good in the NCAA tournament this year.
Yeah. It's very cute, and it takes all kinds. Like I love Peter Buck. I love Michael Stipe.
Right.
I'm mostly okay with Bill Berry. Like I don't have any particularly strong feelings about Bill Berry one way or another.
I'm a well-wisher insofar as I wish him no particular harm.
Yeah, but Mike Mills is obviously the special boy,
right?
As far as this goes.
I would talk about basketball with Mike Mills.
I don't even like basketball, and I would be like,
but I would do it.
Can you teach me about basketball? I'd be like, well, sure. The game started, and he would just kind of slowly explain to me what basketball was.
he would use salt and pepper shakers to like show movements on the court,
and I would be wrapped.
Yep.
Yeah, it'd be great.
So kind of closing out one of the political sagas, Out of Time, as we talked about, the packaging was used to petition the Congress to get this act passed, the motor voter bill, to allow people to register to vote at the DMV when they get their driver's license.
Mm-hmm. Can you remember a time when politicians wanted people to be able to vote? Those are the days.
Jesus.
So we talked about Peter Buck's bad time.
Yeah.
Super depressed, thought like the band like is run its course. Spent a bunch of time in Mexico, just kind of like his weird lost half year. Got divorced, got fat. It was a bad time for Peter Buck.
Mm-hmm.
But he ended up meeting his new wife, Stephanie.
Yes.
And they went on safari.
Yeah. They went on again. They went on an African safari. It's pretty cute, but also, what?
Yeah, it's very strange.
Does that still happen?
He's trying on his rock band.
Yeah.
I've got so since this is the last album that has the oral history, I've got one last specific cute story that's related to Peter Buck during this time.
Okay.
From John Wesley Harding, who's I guess a friend of the band. He's talking about Peter Buck is a very generous and relaxed person. In 1993, he was producing a record for his best friend, who's a folk singer named David Lewis. And it wasn't on a label or anything like that, so it's like a home studio thing.
Right.
Peter gives him a call and says like, "Hey, I'm going to be in town. I'm visiting from Seattle with my girlfriend, who was Stephanie at the time. What do you, do you want to hang out and stuff?" And he's like, "Well, I'm recording this album." And this guy, John Wesley Harding, as a favor to his friend, who is a huge R.E.M. fan, who's making this thing, said, "Hey, like, it would blow this guy's mind if you played on this record." And Peter's like, "Yep." And they spent all night with him playing mandolin. And this guy, like Peter Buck, guested on this unlabeled, just home recording.
Mm-hmm.
This guy did. Like, and can you imagine? Like, I'm going to cut my friend who has like a reel-to-reel is going to cut some songs with me, and then Peter Buck shows up to guest on your album. And he just says that's the kind of guy who he was. Like, he would just kind of do that kind of thing. Very, very cute.
Yeah.
I really like that story. And the end, the kind of kicker to it is the folk singer being like, "Yeah, we did that thing and it was really amazing, but I feel like my vocals, weren't that great. I wasn't super happy. And then his friend being like, yeah, but we're probably going to keep that take, because it's the one that it was like all live takes. And it's the one that like, this R.E.M, this music legend kind of guessed it on.
Yeah. So in the first episode, I made that joke that like for a certain kind of band, Peter Buck just kind of came with the studio.
Yeah.
Like you can interpret that as
a band is all kinds of bands.
Right. Right. But just like when I made the joke, I was thinking more about like indie bands in the 2000s. Right. Mm-hmm. But like you can interpret that as being like, oh, he was incredibly mercenary and he was just out there, getting his name out, blah, blah, blah. No, that really wasn't the case. Like the sense that I get is that Peter Buck just really liked playing music with new people.
Yeah, it's definitely not a thing where he was doing it for self-promotion, because he was already there. Right. What does he need to promote? Mm-hmm. Like he's there.
Yeah.
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 So it's not serving him, it's serving whoever he's appearing on their album much more.
Right.
So
yeah.
Very, very cute.
Mm-hmm.
At this time, Mike Mills joined the Backbeat Band, performed music for a biopic of Stu Sutcliffe.
Yes, the fifth Beatle. Yep.
Yes, the Beatle, the sad Beatle.
Yes.
Michael Stipe performed with 10,000 Maniacs when they were on tour.
Mm-hmm. Nothing unusual there.
Yeah, he's sung on a bunch of different things, and they're great friends.
Yeah. And then, as we mentioned before, Bill Berry moved out of Athens and he bought his farm. And that was how he decided to spend his time away from R.E.M. was kind of again connecting with the earth.
Foreshadowing.
Yes.
He spent his time foreshadowing.
Yeah.
He had a couple practice aneurysms.
Oh, no.
Cracked open a 6-pack of Pracky Boys when it comes to blood vessels in his brain. So, yeah.
Oh, God, I am so terrified of aneurysms, Gary.
Yeah, it sucks. Like, it just can't happen anytime. Like, any of those things, like congenital heart failure, like the things that you just can't screen for that just might happen.
Yep.
Yeah. So let's get into the record.
Yeah. This opens up with a song that I really like and that, Gary, you do not. On the drive side, so the sides are labeled drive and ride. Appropriately, the first track on drive side is Drive.
Yeah.
Yeah, the first single that features nary a chorus.
Yes. Yeah, it is a real, like, as much as I don't like the song very much, it is at least a thesis statement.
Yes.
Where we're going to have, like, not that the songs don't have choruses, but just kind of like, hey, this is going to be a real low tempo, real down, like, as far as just the kind of dynamic range of sounds, like very in the low and mid.
Yeah.
Slow album.
Yes. So like this is far from a Begin the Begin.
Yes. This is the opposite of Begin the Begin.
Right.
Like,
yeah. So this is kind of structurally, it makes sense to me that this doesn't have a chorus because it's very repetitive, but not repetitive in like a, the same thing over and over again kind of way. It's these constructions that are just kind of mixed and matched, hey kids, rock and roll, nobody tells you where to go, etc. Like it is those elements kind of being used within different verses.
Yeah, the verses are very similar to each other, though.
Yeah.
Like, this is one of those, R.E.M., like, a lot, and this is something I've, like, kind of discovered is true of the band in general, is that a lot of times, like, their songs do have a lot of different parts, but the parts use a lot of the same chords and kind of sound similar. So they're different, but not that different.
Yeah.
So, like, the different parts of Drive don't sound that different to me. For the most part, especially the kind of main, like, that verse kind of thing that's happening in the beginning happens a lot.
Yeah. Like it's a really basic chord structure that they're doing. Yes. The D minor to, I think, was it G to F? Something like that. This is one of the first songs I learned to play on guitar, actually. Oh. It is a really good song for using to figure out how to get into and out of an F chord, like a bar chord, very quickly, and also to figure out how to do arpeggiation picks. So like that continues throughout this, and it sticks pretty tight to, Michael Stipe's vocals, which have this kind of echo applied to it. It's very like spacey, very reverby.
Yeah, delay.
Yeah.
I think, right.
And then the thing that I like about this, and the thing that I think elevates it above being kind of just this, simple mountain song that has a really political kind of tinge to it, is the strings. And is just the way that these kind of subtle arrangement elements simmer below the surface and kind of raise everything up, especially as it reaches that climax toward the center. When the when the electric guitar
strings and the
kind of
electric
kicks
guitar
in.
come in.
Yeah, like that. Dun, 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 dun. Like it was like it's Peter Buck playing that like overdubbed with a nickel to make it sound like really, it's just like a lightning bolt, like hitting.
Yeah,
it.
kind of dirty.
Yeah,
and then like that's the moment of the song I like.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's, but it's I think the difference like the reason why I fall down on it or don't come down on it is it ends up not being worth it to get there.
Oh.
Like the things that happen before that are it's too samey and too non-dynamic to get to that point. And the song is like 5 minutes long.
Yeah,
like
that's no good. It could have definitely used like 3 fewer chorus verses or whatever it was.
Yeah. And the kind of political part of it, like, or the lyric element of it, like I feel like it does something that I don't like in songs where I feel like it's engaging in like kind of like a real obvious irony.
Mm-hmm.
These kind of upbeat lyrics that he's kind of just letting fall out of his mouth to slow music.
Oh, I don't hear any irony in it at all.
Because it doesn't or like it's like, hey kids, rock and roll, nobody, like that's like a punk lyric.
Mm-hmm.
And playing that is over very, very slow kind of plodding music is not a punk like musical construction is what I mean by the irony.
Okay. Yeah.
Like it's not a irony in the lyrics, but irony in the contrast between the content of the lyrics and the delivery of the lyrics. And that's like something where it's like you can get away with that. It's not my favorite, like a trick is the wrong word. You know what I mean? Like it's not my favorite like method or approach to things. And there's also just like there's not quite enough words for the song for how long it is.
Yeah,
like there are lots of phrases that repeat. Like
it's a little bit like a beat poetry kind of thing almost.
Yeah,
this is Stipe engaging a little bit in like voice as instrument, but specifically around like words that have very hard K sounds in them.
Yeah. Like kind of speak singing them, like so voice as instrument, but it still does it like it's the instrument is still kind of like very non-dynamic, like very like sings the same note a lot of times in a row.
Yeah, and this is something again, just like different values that we have. I tend to like things that are a little bit more drony. I'm good with noise if that makes any sense. What heightens this for me, in a lot of ways, is the fact that it like a lot of it is the same, and you can kind of like hone in on those incredibly subtle differences. Where like by percentage, like when he revisits this phrase with a different piece of instrumentation beneath it, or with a slightly different emphasis, or like slightly lifting it higher, like that lands to me in a way that makes it resonate as something bigger and new.
Yeah, and just to clarify, it's not the noise part. Like I like noise quite a bit. It's the repetition that I don't like. Like repetition and lack of dynamism. Dynamism. Like the just like that kind of like being in a very narrow sonic space for this long is just like never going to work for me.
Yeah.
But I don't hate it. It's like it's not. It was the first thing I heard from the record, and this was in peak R.E.M mania for me. So it was definitely kind of a slap in the face for that, because I was used to these kind of big opening singles for like the last couple of albums I've been cognizant of.
Right. And it's a very strange album opener. It is a bizarre first single.
It's a super bizarre first single. And they would actually do this, to my mind, with greater success in New Adventures with Ebo the Letter, which is a song I like a lot more. The video for this is also very like not a lot happens in it. It is a black and white video of Michael Stipe crowd surfing and kind of singing along to it, which is kind of interesting. But for me, it shadows kind of the song too, where it's like, is this interesting for 5 minutes?
Yeah. I can't defend the length. Like I like it as a just kind of like a piece of, I don't know. It's frustrating when R.E.M just kind of engages in kind of just like imagery poetry or whatever it is, and they do just the random images going off at weird times and stuff. This is long and sustained. It is it is mainly one big thing happening. But as the additional instruments come in, you get these shots from the ground level that are not over top with the different people in the band. And then you go back to it and just kind of playing off of those strobes as well. Like I'm kind of into it, but I can't defend the length of either the song or the video.
I wonder if I would feel better about it if it wasn't a single, or if it was on a different album. Like if I didn't feel like that kind of like something being in a very narrow sonic space and kind of being really low tempo wasn't like, it's not my favorite thing about this record. Like it's a defining feature.
Yeah.
What is one of the big reasons why I don't like this record that much, because that's just not that interesting to me. If this were on, on Out of Time or something, I might dig it, you know, because it's not that much less dynamic than, Country Feedback or, Country Feedback's pretty dynamic. What am I thinking of? Low. It's not that much less dynamic than Low, and Low works better for me. Or, or Ebo the Letter. Like, and I think that has to do with the album they're around and position almost too.
Yeah. Like if they opened this with Try Not to Breathe, it actually wouldn't be that bad.
No. This is album. They talked about how they couldn't really do this live.
No.
It didn't really work because of those reasons. They later figured it out. There are live versions of them doing this version, kind of after it became a hit. But initially when they played this live, they did this kind of Gang of Four kind of funk version of it. Ended up on this compilation called Alternative NRG.
It was recorded and mixed using solar power.
Yes. And it is an interesting version of this.
Yeah.
That like, I don't know, like it still doesn't totally work for me, but it's like, it makes sense live. To me, like I could see it kind of getting you moving because it's like weirdly versatile song. That version makes sense too.
Yeah. I mean, and that goes back to the actual chord construction being as basic as it is. Right.
Yeah.
Like just the less intricacy you put at that bass track, the kind of the more flexible you can be with it.
Yeah, you could do anything with this song.
Yeah,
pretty much.
Yep.
Yeah. A much more upbeat song, and one of like just a couple upbeat songs on the album is the next song, "Try Not to Breathe."
Yes, upbeat musically, lyrically, this is fucking tragic.
Yeah, super sad song. I love this song.
Oh, it's really good.
Yeah, this is if like again when you accept the weird classics, as we do, this is probably my favorite song on the record, excepting "Man on the Moon," which I think is another masterpiece class.
Much like you couldn't accept, End of the World, I cannot accept Man on the Moon. Like, that's going to be my favorite. We'll talk about
Accept or accept?
Accept.
Oh, okay. Like, I was like, oh, you can't accept Man on the Moon.
Like, this is going to be a very different episode than you thought it was going to be. No, I will not jettison Man on the Moon.
I don't want to. I jettison it because it's too obvious of a first place song.
Right. Yeah.
Like, I'm not jettisoning it. Like, it's my favorite.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, like, I'm calling out my second favorite because it's my favorite. Like with so I love Try Not to Breathe though. It's a waltz, so it's like it sounds a little bit more lively, even though it is it's not like a fast blistering song, but it's in 3, so it's a little bit like kind of quicker.
Yes. And like the vocal performance on this is full of cracks. Like this is Michael Stipe and like full on I don't know, like it's a little bit of a continuation of like where he started in Swan Swan Hummingbird and any songs that kind of followed in that stripe.
Yeah. And lyrically, this is very like the kind of story, the genesis of this is really interesting, is where Peter Buck was recording this. The way he was recording it is he played very quietly and he had to have his amp right next to the mic. And the sound engineer who was recording it said like, hey, try to be quiet. And he said, okay, I'll try not to breathe. Yeah. And Michael Stipe was just like, yep.
Yeah. He heard that on the demo and he's like, there we go. I've got a concept for this.
Yeah. Because the original title was called Passion. And then initially it was Passion, parenthetical, Try Not to Breathe. And then Passion got left off.
Which is good because they already have that.
Because that's, and it's a really, really sad song about this idea of like killing yourself so your family will remember you this way. Like you've had a full life. Like remember me at my strength. I don't want to fade out.
Yeah.
In front of family.
Right. Yeah. I want to have control over my own dignity, and to kind of not be a burden on other people. Like this is an incredibly morose reflection on just like the indignities of age.
Yes. Yeah. And he dedicated it to his grandma, like live and everything. He kind of admitted that's what he was thinking about later. And it's a very, very sweet song. It is really catchy. I like the way it's constructed. Electric guitar is used really well in this as well.
Yes.
This kind of feedback kind of thing comes up every once in a while for a song that doesn't rock. It rocks on the out of time or the automatic for the people curve, but not on the real curve.
Yeah. Feedback is used very well throughout the album. I think that is exactly the role that an electric guitar needs to have on this.
On this specific record. Yeah. It's great. Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah. And they're also doing something here, which, we're going to see again and again, which is, Michael Stipe kind of singing over himself. In addition to having, the background vocals from Mills and Berry. So like as this continues, you get these kind of parenthetical, line extensions that are, done by any of the singing members of the band.
They also do one of those kind of overdub things is treated in a way that we'll see on Monster a lot more. Mm-hmm. Like there's this kind of radio Walkman up, ba-da, like when he sings that little bit over it with this treated kind of mechanical sounding voice.
Yeah.
This is I love this song.
Yeah.
Like, I think the song is very, very good.
Yeah. It is fucking heart wrenching. And
heart wrenching, but also you can still hum it. Like it still gets stuck in my head in like a pop sense. Like, and it does that. I guess it's the good version of that irony I was talking about before, where it's like, it's kind of upbeat sounding, but like it's actually incredibly dour.
Yeah. I mean, I call that the Eels trick.
Yeah.
This was
the Cure does it too. Like it's a real Cure thing.
Yeah. So a particular stripe of like indie. Yeah, it's definitely there. Like this is a song that I actually didn't like a lot when I was younger. Like I dug the sound of it, but like it didn't resonate like it does for me, coming into 30, and having relatives who are aging in a kind of not great way. So like going back to and listening to it, just even in the past month, like driving to and from home, actually it was kind of like a punch to the gut in a way that I didn't expect.
Yeah. I mean, because it's such a real thing, right? So like every one of my family members who has died, like that's the hardest part of it is the diminished state you find them in. Like the people, the difference would be like my grandmother and my grandfather are both dead. My grandmother died. I got to see her before she died. I came to the hospital. And the hardest part was having that be my final memory of her is just kind of wrecked.
Yeah.
As this kind of ruin. My grandfather died more unexpectedly. I didn't get to see that. So the last time I saw him, he was more like he was not doing great, but was like ambulatory and like not in the hospital and was not dying.
Right.
So that's my last memory of him. And that's the kind of difference. Yeah. And making that a conscious choice as opposed to just kind of an accident of fate is kind of what it's about. And that's a very good thing to write a song about.
Yeah. It's very strange to have this as kind of the triumphant kind of semi-opener after you get the drive cleansing the palate so people can get into it, right? This song about kind of taking your life literally into your own hands, as you're old to determine your end with dignity, paired up with the most popular song in this album being about exactly not doing that when you're young.
Yeah. Suicide, okay sometimes. Yeah. Not okay other times.
It's a complicated message.
Yes. So next up is Sidewinder Sleeps Tonight, which I wish they hadn't sequenced right next to Try Not to Breathe.
Yeah.
The second side could have used this.
It really could have.
Yeah. And they're not necessarily samey, but they have some kind of similar instrumentation to them. They're different time signatures. They sound like different songs, but it's very weird to put these as 2 and 3.
Right. This I think would have been a good like side one closer, actually.
Yeah. I think so too.
Like leading into...
Not that the side one closer is still good, but like it would have been
Sweetness Follows would have been like Sweetness Follows would have been a good pair with Try Not to Breathe, actually, because they're about very similar kind of stuff. Do those as kind of like an opening suite and then let it slide into some of the more complex stuff as it goes. Yeah. And
this is the only thing on the record that is lightweight.
Yeah, this is a really frivolous song. I love this song. I think it's really,
I like this
really
song
good.
A lot too. Yeah, and it needs to be like we talked about kind of standard R.E.M. pop songs, and like if any record that they've done needs one of these, like this record needs this. I think the members of the band don't like it, and they were like, "Oh, we wish we hadn't put it on the album and stuff." And I'm like, "Are you kidding? Like if Try Not to Breathe is the most upbeat thing, you were going to put this on and not it and leave, take this out and leave Ignoreland and okay.
That reveals that actually tells a story, doesn't it?
Yeah. That's unfortunate. I'm glad that somebody argued you out of that because.
Yeah. But this is a song that kind of like opens up with Michael Stipe doing a straight up like Lion Sleeps Tonight kind of vocal thing. I'm not going to try and do it because I don't really have a falsetto that I can call up on demand. But that is kind of not unintentional. They had covered the Lion Sleeps Tonight song everybody knows before, and they actually
that's different. Like so, at least
I could swear they had done it live, like as an acapella, like goofy thing.
Maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know. I couldn't find a version of it.
Yeah, I think I read that in one of my books. That just kind of like, they had a history of doing this, and also like an affection for the song in general.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, they didn't record the version of the song until after this.
Right.
After they'd written this. So like the story is kind of weird where like they had this thing they wanted to do. They were like, oh, we could probably change it and get away with it. Let's not do that. Let's contact the people who did The Lion Sleeps Tonight. The Lion Sleeps Tonight people said, we weren't going to charge you, but I think it'd be cool if you covered our song. Mm-hmm. And they made it a B-side, which gave them royalties. And then also, was a nice little compromise because they genuinely do like that song.
Yeah. Like there's a quote, like, we never would have agreed to cover it if we didn't like it. Like that. Yeah. We would have just left the song off the album. We had others that we could have done.
Yeah.
And like, for as much as there are those similarities in the title, and then also the kind of the falsetto kind of riff that they do, that's really where it ends.
Yeah. It's not actually very much of a version of,
no,
it doesn't have that much to do with Lion Sleeps Tonight. Instead, it's this kind of just song about kind of a sketch of communication and using the phone.
Yeah.
Specifically, how you when you call a phone, you wake it up. Like, are you going to call this thing? It can't. I'm on a payphone. I can't actually get a hold. You have to actually call me on this thing. There's like a great little bit, and I hate Genius.com. But that I never, it figured something out for me. And the biggest thing about Genius.com is when you look at them for things that are really obvious.
Oh yeah.
Like the Genius.com for night swimming is one of the stupidest pages on the internet.
Yep. No, I've trust me, I've got all of these songs open in tabs. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, that's ridiculous. But this thing where he's like, try to, there's some clever wordplay where it's like, call me and try to wake up, the Sidewinder sleeps in a coil. And the genius over at Genius said like the coil is the phone cord.
Yep.
And I'm like, oh, that's pretty good. Like that's a nice little, bit of double wordplay. And, yeah,
it's a good catch.
Yeah. But the song ends up actually being very, very simple, because of that. Like, it's just kind of this little picture.
Yeah.
There,
this machine can only swallow money.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's great. Like I love the chorus in this for as much like it's kind of like almost like a police trick almost where like, hey, you've got this long phrase that you want to fit into the chorus.
Planting a weapon on someone you shot.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. So, and then working with the DA on the sly.
Yeah.
No, like Sting. So the chorus is call me when you try to wake her up. But Michael Stipe kind of delivers this almost like as this kind of like weird patois chant. So come and try to wake her up.
Yeah. It says it really, really quick. And then the backup vocals do a kind of more relaxed version.
Yeah.
Afterwards, allowing you to kind of pick it up. But it's a widely misunderstood lyric. It's not totally comprehensible. It doesn't need to be.
No.
This is another like voices instrument kind of thing. Like, and then there's kind of a bit of this where that's kind of another one of those apocryphal, like shows up in every R.E.M. book about Michael Stipe doing a line in this where he talks about a reading from Dr. Seuss and kind of laughing on the recording. And the reason why is because every time he said it, it sounded like Dr. Zeus. And Mike Mills was goofing on him and trying to get him to say it right, and he couldn't.
Yeah.
And Dr. Zeus is a very funny idea. So who can blame him?
It's pretty good. I mean, like, and we've run into this in our 5-hour recording sessions. We will say something incorrectly and just start laughing. That gets like cut out. Or it doesn't. We still use it like R.E.M. does. But
it's a gift.
Yeah.
Like if you that's if you accidentally say, because nobody compose that. That's such a fun like idea, you just say something wrong and it like sounds funny on its own and like just happened.
You get loopy, same thing happened for me all the time at like play practices in high school. Like just everybody like we were all about to break and just it's a gift that we just need to like laugh about this bit of unintentional poetry that happened here. So like I read that story and like I hear that in the recording, it's like that's great.
Yeah, it's very like I think that it's a kind of a mark of not maturity, but like I just appreciate the person who rolls with that kind of thing rather than being like, there's a version of me when I was younger and more self-conscious, and there are people out there who get like very mad at themselves for fucking that up, and it's like, like when you realize that the stakes for almost everything are actually pretty low.
Right.
You know,
that being in trouble is a fake idea.
Yeah, exactly. And that, none of entertainment is not saving lives, in any kind of way that is meaningful. Like you doing this isn't going to be somebody dying.
Well, wait till the next song, Gary.
Well, that's true. That's when they decided to take care of it, take care of all the suicides.
To solve that problem once and for all.
Yeah. Suicide ended by R.E.M.
Yeah.
But yeah, Sidewinder Sleep Site. There's a video we should mention, even though it's a footnote, and we're going to make it a footnote.
Oh yeah.
It's just it's kind of like some weird camera tricks and rotating in these weird kind of colored rooms, and
yeah. It's like paper
walls. A performance video.
Yeah. It's and it's Michael Stipe in a regrettable hat. I'm very happy that he decided to embrace his baldness.
Man, I'm glad he decided to embrace his baldness. I'm glad that Peter Buck got out of his vest phase.
You're just kind of like he saw the Losing My Religion video. I was like, oh, it's kind of snazzy, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm just gonna keep doing that. It's like, buddy.
And Charlie is like, Mike Mills is on the phone to Tarsum. Please, Tarsum, you have to talk to him. Tell him that vests aren't always clothed.
Yeah. How often do you think Peter Buck has left the house just wearing a vest and pants and no shirt under it?
Like
north of 20, right?
He goes full on Starburns. I don't know. Yeah,
I think north of 20 is probably correct.
Yeah. Just accidentally, because you sometimes you wear clothes that you're comfortable with in the house, and you step out to go to the corner store. Yeah,
I walk to the store in my slippers frequently.
Oh yeah, I specifically bought hard sole slippers so I could do that.
Yeah. Let's talk about how overrated and overplayed Everybody Hurts is.
Oh Jesus. I was very happy to hear you guys. So you and Brayton, who people will recognize.
Check it out, Comrades Brayton.
Yeah, check it out, Comrades Brayton, and they will also recognize him from the kind of controversial section in the last episode about Radio Song. People kind of came out of the woodwork to really like Radio Song.
No one's saying why. There's just like I like Radio Song.
Got a couple of emails about it. I may include it in the next letters section.
Yeah. Did they say why?
No.
Yeah, why? Why don't they do that? Why don't? It's obvious.
Well, like the obvious, like the part that just needs to go unsaid is like, okay, cool. I'm happy you like it. I wouldn't take it.
Yeah, I mean, it's not that you don't have to justify yourself to us, but like, no. If you're gonna write a letter, let us know.
Yeah.
But anyway, so we dunked on Radio Song a bunch.
We dunked on Radio Song, and you guys did a Teenage Dirtbags episode about the video for Everybody Hurts, and also I was very kind of relieved to hear that you were not that crazy about it as a song, because even though I think they went into this with the best of intentions, and there are some kind of cool moments in it. Again with the strings and some of Michael Stipe's vocal performance, this is really misguided.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah.
Like, and it's going to be hard to top this for the Summer of Glum, the Teenage Dirtbags for this year. Mm-hmm. When we get done with Summer Jam season and start doing songs about suicide and death afterwards. Like this is kind of like, I feel like the apotheosis of like the kind of bummer songs.
Yeah.
Like it's a hopeful message, but it's so plotting and it's so simple.
Yeah, it's so incredibly locked in.
It's very lockstep, very predictable. Like it's like they set out to make a song, and they did. Mm-hmm. Like they set out to make a song that would be like easy to understand in every possible way.
Like, hey, we're talking to a seventh grader.
Yes. Yeah, they specifically said like, hey, we're talking as teens. Like we don't want teens to kill themselves. Like let's make something teens can understand. There's a Peter Buck quote where he's like, yeah, you can't make a song where you have to like pretty much solve a math equation to get it for teens. And I'm like, you got to give teens a little bit more credit, buddy. Like, I was a teenager when I heard this, and I thought this was fucking baby music.
And also as a teenager, the most annoying thing in the world, aside from being interrupted, was being underestimated.
Yeah, absolutely. Like somebody condescending to you as a teen and being like, oh, like, can you figure that? Like, that was the worst, especially, if you are a suicidal teen, which like you're more likely to want to kill yourself if you're kind of smart.
Yeah.
That's science bears that out. Like it's not, that's not me being flip. Like, it is a creative and smart people who tend to be more depressed.
Right.
So like this is kind of misguided in every way and is so long. Like every song on this album needs to be about 20% shorter.
Yep.
This one needs to be like 40% shorter. Like this is like a 5.5 minute song, and this could be 3 minutes and still feel long.
Yes. Yeah.
What a bummer.
It definitely, it certainly is a bummer. And, you know, like I'm super sympathetic to the message. You know, I battle depression to this day, you know, battle, whatever. It's not like I've got a fucking shield and sword, but like even back as a teen when I was in the audience and listening to this, because like, fuck yeah, I love Man on the Moon. I'm going to listen to this whole album. You know, this is a single that I've heard. Everybody Hurts Us. And, you know, like, no, it just didn't speak. It didn't carry. And instead it became kind of this shorthand in other media for like, oh, okay, now you have to have sympathy for whoever's on screen at the moment.
Yeah. Yep. It is so direct.
Yeah.
In a way. And that's something that like I like even on the Gary curve where I'm like generally not super into that. Like I feel like that's something you have to deploy tactically.
Yeah.
This thing is so direct from front to back. As just kind of like, it might as well just be called like, hey, don't kill yourself.
Yeah.
You know, and it's again, like you said, like sympathetic to the motivation.
Yeah. And like at this point, after we've done a little bit of dunking, it's probably worth saying, like, if this song made you feel good in a particularly vulnerable or dark moment, great.
Yeah. I wouldn't take that away from you. Like, I'm just speaking to my reaction.
I don't look down on you for that. Like, if like me saying, hey, this sounds like an ineffective thing to me, doesn't mean that like, oh, there's something wrong with you if you found solace in it, because, you know, like any of these messages, it could have gotten to the right person at the right time.
Yeah. Solace is solace.
Yeah.
You know, and like I've taken solace from silly shit.
Oh yeah.
You know, I just, for my specific values, which is all I can speak to, this song is very contrary to them.
Yeah.
You know, that kind of directness, that kind of being pandered to, I have a very visceral reaction against.
Yeah.
You know, don't try to make me feel something, you know, or I mean, like do that, but just like, I guess, you know, songs do that, but I guess like I would rather come to something on my own. Like, don't meet me 95% of the way there.
Yeah.
You know, I don't need that. Like, you know, I want to do a little bit of work.
Yeah. And just like musically, like even if even if this was just Michael Stipe, you know, doing, you know, singing Simlish over the actual song itself, I wouldn't be that into it, because it is just this, you know, eighth note arpeggiation of a couple of basic chords with nothing really happening on the bass. And like the drum is just a drum machine. Like, even though this is a Bill Berry joint, he doesn't really appear on it aside from like a couple of incidental instruments.
I think that's why it's the composition and the kind of chord progressions are so simple and basic. This is like written by somebody, you know, who is not like, it's got that naivete that they've used to good effect. We talked about it in the last couple of records here, where it's just kind of like, oh, like this is kind of Baby's first sad song, you know, like if it's not your first instrument. Yeah. I think this is really a bummer, and I never need to hear it again.
Yeah.
Like it was so inescapable the year it came out, like never. Like I will be happy if I never hear this again in my life. And that doesn't mean I don't want the Wishmaster to come kill me now, because like I haven't heard it in a while, and like, and that's how that articulates. But I mean, like I want to live to a ripe old age until I start trying not to breathe. But in that time, not having heard Everybody Hurts. Yeah. And after that, sweetness follows, as long as Monty doesn't get a raw deal. Like it is like, it'll all work out.
But like, you know, there were stories about this kind of becoming like, I think in the book that I was reading, you know, the book that would eventually become Perfect Circle, Remarks Remembered, it's very complicated. They were talking about like this was used, it was played after like a moment of silence after a mass shooting in Scotland, right, where that was just not heard of. It's like in 1996, like, hey, a moment of silence on the radio, and then let's just cut out of that with Everybody Hurts. And like later on, this would end up being paired with Let Me In. Which again is like super on the nose about that. Like, there's just something. There's something
I think Let Me In is much better. Like we'll get to that.
Yeah, we're gonna get to that. But like, Let Me In is a song about, you know, like directly entreating Kurt Cobain not to kill himself, and then like in encores following that with Everybody Hurts. Like it feels incredibly flip, and I know that they're not intentionally trying to treat the subject matter lightly.
No, but they are worlds apart as far as qualities go. One of them is a specific relatable thing that you're allowed to draw your own conclusions from and feels personal. This feels weirdly distant and commercial and calculated in a way that it shouldn't for something with this kind of message.
Yeah. Not to exceed my 9/11 references quota, but like this was also played all the time in the aftermath and in the tributes and stuff after that.
Yeah.
Like it just became this shorthand for like, okay, now everybody feels sad.
Yeah. And I dislike that quite a bit. The book, the song by song book I have has a little cute bit where it says, when playing live, Mike Mills is even given to kicking away his piano stand during the chorus. It's like, what a rocker. He's really letting loose.
Yeah. Well, that moment when Stipe starts singing the don't throw your hand. Yeah. And it is that really plaintive yell. Like, it does feel engineered to make you feel something, like the rest of it does, but it actually kind of works because it does just kind of like slip out of nowhere with a swell of strings. Like, it's an effective song, in spite of all of my guards against it at certain points. So I can kind of see why he would do that to play it up, but like, I just doesn't feel right to me.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. That's pretty much what I feel about it too. The video is for a longer kind of moment by moment analysis, like that Teenager Bags episode is worth listening to.
Yeah.
It is people in the video, like I remember when it came out, liking the video.
It's pretty, like it's well shot, and like
it's well shot.
I like the way they like work text into it, even if it does end up being for a pretty goofy effect.
Yeah.
Like just
it's all these people trapped in a traffic jam, if you've never seen it. And Michael and R.E.M. decides to get out of their cars, and everyone gets out of their cars.
Yeah, and gets out of their cars, and then Pied Pipers them off the bridge, and it ends with a newscast saying, "I've never seen this many people disappear." So, like, did they jump off the bridge? Because that
he raptures them.
Okay, there we go. Like, that's not a good ending.
No, it's Michael Stipe brings them all into heaven.
Okay,
which is contrary to the message.
Yeah, he powders them.
He powders them up into like a live heaven. Not dead heaven, like regular heaven.
Right.
New Orleans instrumental number 1, I don't have a lot to say about.
No.
Nor New Orleans instrumental number 2, which we'll like talk about in the B-sides, but like it is what it sounds like. It's like this electric piano kind of jam thing they did when they were very drunk at 2 a.m.
Yeah. I'm trying to find this quote in the song by song book, the Inside Out. But Peter Buck says, "Oh, we've never really recorded while we were drunk." And I was like, "Oh, liar, you liar, you lie."
Yeah. Good one, bud.
Yep.
And this is this is the first time they put a full instrumental on there with no vocals. I don't really know that this needs to be here either. Like, this feels like filler to me.
It does.
And in an album that needs more kind of dynamic songs, like putting in something that's an instrumental version of the kind of low tempo, like very narrow sonic space songs, like feels misguided to me.
Yeah. No, like if it was an instrumental with like a little bit of spine, or if it was an instrumental that would have served as like an effective buffer between Everybody Hurts and Sweetness Follows. Like if it was some kind of bridge, like that is a good role that an instrumental can serve, on a vocal album.
Yeah.
It doesn't do that. Like, it's pleasant, I like the sound of a good electric piano, but like when I listen to this, knowing how they record their stuff, all I can hear is like, oh, this is a song that didn't get finished. Yeah,
I agree. And the same thing for that B-side too, where it's like they gave a sequel to this song. There's the Final Fantasy X2 of R.E.M. songs. The first side closes out with Sweetness Follows, which is another, like, it actually pairs kind of well with Drive, if that was the idea. In that they are both kind of like, this is kind of around this kind of very repetitious cello line that plays through most of this song. I like this song better. I like Sweetness Follows, okay. I don't love it, but I like it. I think that a lot of it's like the kind of the lyrics, which I think are pretty good.
The lyrics are good. In that they're specifically about the loss of parents. It is like one sibling talking to another about losing a parent, which is, again, kind of walking in a little bit of the same ground that Try Not to Breathe is doing. I like this because of that droning kind of quality to it. And I think they use like fuzz and feedback to really good effect in it. But like it is really kind of like straight up the middle to me.
Yeah, it's one of the things that that drone that makes the drone kind of work for me, I think, is that the lyrics are in kind of a higher register.
Oh yeah, so they're not sharing the same register. Yeah.
So it's like the lower part drones, but at least we have a little bit of like, you know, a little bit more space there. And like, you know, the lyrics are good, and this fulfills like some of the same purposes that Everybody Hurts does, but better. Mm-hmm. Like this, you know, these little things that can pull you under. Like that's a really like universal message too about you know, life's travails. Yeah, it's just not as direct, you know.
Yeah.
There's an anecdote about this where Michael Stipe had to specifically call his parents and tell them that's not about them. Like this is a character thing, right. Because it's you know, distance from the parents and blind, you know, from one parent and blind to the other one. Like it doesn't speak well of a familial relationship.
No, it feels like it is written from an autobiographical place.
Yeah.
And like we don't really know anything about like his, aside from like years and locations, about Michael Stipe's upbringing. So
he's very close with his family. Yeah. You know, so we know that like he wouldn't have this kind of relationship with them.
Yeah.
So that ends that side. We move on to ride side.
Yard side.
Yeah, yard side. We move on to 50 Cent ride or side.
This opens up with a song that I like just fine. It's called Monty Got a Raw Deal. This is specifically about the actor Montgomery Clift, who was kind of like an actor in the late 40s and early 50s, like a film noir kind of guy, who had a pretty tragic life.
He's for a long time not so much, like a very handsome leading man.
Yeah. It was kind of a handsome leading man. So lifelong tragedy was that he was homosexual. But he had to repress it because he had to live into this kind of image of being a kind of a sex symbol for women. And then like toward the end, he had this terrible car accident and disfigured, I believe, the left side of his face. And so, you know, like he still continued to work, but he had to be shot entirely from his right side. So, you know, this idea of sexual identity, but also, you know, still trying to continue, existing in the spotlight. Despite this kind of, again, this raw deal. There we go. Yeah, raw deal. That's what I was looking for.
Monty did a raw dog. It's that's the automatic for the people themed porno I'm working on. Between Everybody Squirts and like Skeetness Follows and, you know.
And Man in the Moon.
Yeah. Man in the Moon. Yeah. Night Fucking. Fuck Me Kitten. All the songs I do for my automatic for the people.
Autoscatic for the people.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah. But yeah, so I think again, middle of the road though.
Yeah.
Right. So like Small is pretty middle of the road. This is pretty middle of the road for me too. Yeah. Like it's
I think the guitar part in this actually elevates it a little bit. I think there's some really interesting kind of like finger picking going on the guitar. It feels almost like a banjo part by way of an acoustic guitar. I think Peter Buck is doing some good stuff here. Yeah,
it sounds like the song by song thing says it sounds like a little bit Asian. Like ding 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 ding. Before chorus. It's okay.
Yeah.
As far as like embarrassing R.E.M. songs go, I think Ignoreland is pretty embarrassing. Listening to it again, it's like lyrically embarrassing, and the beginning of it is way worse than the actual verses. Like there are parts that sound okay. So when I was like, "Oh, Ignoreland is really embarrassing," I think that people were just like, "Oh, it's not so bad." They weren't thinking about how poorly the beginning of it ages, the reflex, yeah.
The call and response, like yeah. Like, is this fucking rhythm heaven?
Like, oh man, automatic for the people, rhythm heaven.
But yeah, so this is incredibly like it's overtly political. They say it's the most overtly political thing they've done in interviews, but like you guys did document. Come on, like don't act like this is a new thing. This is
very direct though. Like this is so direct, like straight down to just like name checking.
Yeah,
people.
Yeah, these bastards stole their power from the victims of the us versus them years.
Yeah.
Like Neil Young is name checked a lot in this, and like this is like they're picking the very worst Neil Young to pull from. If you include the word policies in your fucking lyrics, you've lost.
Yeah. Yeah. It's I think this is pretty, and then the throw up on your shoes like George Bush thing, like it's very specific. And he admits it, right? So like the end of it, like the end of the song where it's like, I know this is just vitriol, but I feel, having screamed, don't you? Like, it's one of those things where I think like it's like a character standing around criticizing the plot doesn't make it okay.
No.
Like owning something doesn't automatically make it good.
Right.
And I think that's a mistake in criticism of things where it's just like, oh, they admit it. And that's a separate issue. Like it's good that they admit it, but it doesn't make it good.
It's like a weird inward turning form of like whataboutism or something like that.
Yes.
Yeah.
And like, I find this like musically and lyrically just like,
well, the mix is fucking atrocious, and the band readily admits that. Like,
yeah.
The composition kind of portion of this was incredibly overwrought, and they got a lot of like takes that were like halfway there. But like what ultimately resulted is something that is just a fucking mess.
Yeah. And
like what's a little bit kind of crazy about this is like Ignoreland is entirely obviated by Rockin' in the Free World.
Oh yeah, like Rockin' in the Free World is a great song.
Yeah, it is, and like it is so much more effective as a piece of political statement. like pretty much anything from Freedom is actually like a lot more on point than a good deal of like R.E.M's overtly political stuff. So like this is a song that is kind of unnecessary.
I would even say that our like overtly political R.E.M. songs tend to be a lot better than this.
Yeah,
and part of it is just not being quite so on the nose. And it's not like, again, it's similar to Everybody Hurts where I'm like, I agree with him.
Yeah.
That sucks. Like that sucks that happened. I lived through that. I wasn't as conscious about politics as I am now then, but it's like, I would be the same thing. I'd be mad about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
The same way they are. Yeah. I'd be really mad about it.
I definitely agree that the Information Nation took their clues from the all soundbite gluttons.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. And why even call it America anymore? Like it's more like Ignore Land. Is that title? Like dorky is that fucking title?
It sounds like a weird like name for a fashion line or something like that. Like what it calls to mind for me is like Zoo York. Yeah. Or even like Zooropa. It's like that kind of thing. It's like it's just dated in a way that I don't associate with a band of this caliber. No.
And dorky in a way. TV does tell a million lies. Like it just feels like you're like putting on a full suit of armor and charging into battle against something everybody already hates.
Nobody's on the other side of this.
Yeah, nobody. It's there's like a quote that Kurt Vonnegut has that I really like that I think about, which is like criticizing short stories is like putting on a full set of armor and attacking a pudding. Attacking a cup of pudding, and it's like it's kind of what I think this is. It's like it's such a obvious thing. It's real. It's not like an unpowerful thing, but it just I don't know. It just doesn't. You're not convincing anybody, and I guess it's all just vitriol, and he felt better. But yeah, I don't know.
It's it seems like for the one song that will actually rock on this, it does feel like a waste.
Yeah, I would have preferred not to have this, and it's not like this would have fit in on Monster either, like as a rock song. Like this I don't see where this fits in their kind of career at all.
Oh, like it would have been like it would have required a lot more work, but like maybe Document.
Yeah, like it could possibly be the worst song on Document. Like if it tried hard.
If it tried. Don't give up, kid. So moving on to Starmie Kitten, has that weird name because of, and every book will tell kind of the same story about the Rolling Stones having to change Starfucker to what's that?
Star?
Yeah, Star. There we go.
Yeah.
The book that I read actually told a weirder story about this. So the last line of the song is, "Fuck me, kitten," and like this is a weirdly like ribald song for this album. But like they were showing it to Meg Ryan,
Yeah, I heard the stories on my book too.
Yeah, the actress, who would eventually go on to be the model for Tidus from Final Fantasy X, and saying like, hey, we've got this album. She was touring the studio, and like, hey, we got the song called "Fuck Me, Kitten." Like, oh, back where I'm from, you couldn't sell an album that had a song called that. And I'm like, okay, well, we'll change it. But like Peter Buck like threw a fit.
Yeah, we're gonna do this so Meg Ryan can buy it. What are you, Tipper Gore? Yeah, like and. I'm fine that they changed it, but it's like, it would be a silly hill to die on. They didn't change the lyrics in the actual song. They just changed the title.
Yeah.
And this is, so I have come to peace with this song. They're like the lyrics I like, they're elements of the melody I like.
Mm-hmm.
It is so slow.
I don't care for it one bit.
It is like molasses dripping down the side of like a slight incline. Like it is so like I don't know, I don't even know how to describe how slow this song is.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's like a 60 beats per minute song.
It's like if somebody gave Perfect Circle Thorazine.
Yeah. It is so slow. And like the things I like about it. So like, I think the lyrics are kind of like interesting in that they're like weird and abstract. And he's doing this kind of thing where he matches talking about inconsequential physical objects with kind of relationship metaphors.
Yeah.
That I like.
Hey, love, look into your glove box heart.
Yeah. This is, this whole thing about, and there's little clever bits of lyricism. He's talking about this, like, making new keys for this heart, for whatever he's locking up, and this whole repeated thing of like, I've changed locks, you can't have one. Like that kind of thing, which I like. I've changed the locks. Have I lost you? Like these kind of things, like about changing the locks as a concrete measure of, drawing a line under something in your life, like a relationship ending.
Yeah.
I like a lot. And there are little bits of like where the lyrics kind of crawl out of it, like the Terminator crawling out of the lava at the end of T2, yep. Just like the melody kind of ding, 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 will kind of like come up a little bit. But it is so slow.
Yeah.
This is so bland.
So spoilers, I think Ignoreland is definitely the worst song on this album because it doesn't succeed either lyrically or musically. I skip Starmie Kitten more than I skip Ignoreland.
Yeah. And I am happy to skip them both, for the most part. Like neither of these work for me that well. This will be re-recorded as a novelty thing later. Yeah. Which we'll talk about kind of when it comes out. But there's another version of this that's much more interesting and unlistenable that comes later. Yeah. So just know that we're not skipping it.
No.
So I don't have anything else to say about Starmie Kitten.
No, neither do I, because I'm very excited about talking about Man on the Moon.
Yeah, Man on the Moon is great.
Yeah, this might be my favorite R.E.M. song, actually.
This is a good candidate for that.
Yeah. This is like weirdly tied up in history for me. Like just in terms of like finding my taste in comedy and finding my taste in like a period of time that I could romanticize a little bit. Like Andy Kaufman, even from early age, was kind of a hero. So when I found out that there was this really great, strange song with this weird beat and this kind of intricate composition about him by this like weird understated band, like this was kind of like an intro point to REM for me. And also like, underline my affection for Andy Kaufman as like a figure and a creative, I don't know, like idol. Is that a weird, that sounds shitty. I don't mean that.
But not like idol, but somebody you look up to.
Yeah.
I like this. It didn't come at me that I was vaguely familiar with Andy Kaufman at the time I heard this, and I was definitely familiar with REM. So I was just wanting to listen to the new REM single. But for my money, this is the song on this album that sounds like an REM song.
Yeah.
Like unequivocally, like this sounds like an REM classic to me in a way. Even the songs I like on this album don't.
Right.
And it has they're so good at these gigantic soaring choruses.
Oh my God.
That whenever they don't happen, I'm kind of like, if there's an album without one, I kind of get bummed out.
Right.
It is such a good, and it's so fun to sing. It's so fun to go along with. The melody is very good.
I don't even care that there's like 7 too many choruses for karaoke.
Yeah, choruses and verses. This song is too long too. Every song on this album needs to be shorter, even though good ones.
Right, but I wish and pray to God that I can find some kind of weird reunion concert where they will play this, so I can go there and be in the room for when it breaks out, so I can just participate in that, because like I'm not that down for sing-along stuff, but like this is made for it.
Yeah.
It seems like this is a 100% participatory song that will like sweep you away. Like every single element is on lock in the album version, and just every live version that I've seen has been immensely satisfying because of the crowd participation.
Yeah. It does a great job of like mixing the kind of singy, Michael Stipe and the big chorus.
Yeah.
Singy Michael Stipe. Like it does both. Like there's a little bit of something for everyone. There's like the backing vocal lines, the Mike Mills, like during the chorus,
hey, yeah,
like,
hey, yeah,
oh,
hey.
Or, well, that, and then like Man on the Moon, that pops up afterwards. That like sounds so good.
Yeah.
And it's also like, this is very, the actual words of this, if you don't consider what it's about, are very direct, but in a way that it's like slangy in a way that grounds it.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
like, if you believe they put a man on the moon, if you believe there's nothing out there to see and nothing is cool,
but
like that nothing is cool line is so good to me. Like that just works.
Like, I mean, it's like again, just something that we talked about in the Try This About Achewood and Sunset Rubdown, like this mixture of like high and low.
Yeah, high language and low language.
Yeah,
kind of thing.
And like any other band with any other treatment would probably have fucked this up, but it comes across as this ridiculously sincere meditation on faith from a really non-religious perspective, because it is, about like, it's kind of up to you to decide whether Andy Kaufman and Elvis are dead or not, and, mixing these credible things that, happened within people's lives, within the 70s, putting Isaac Newton up against Moses, putting these elements about like, hey, here's a truck stop instead of St. Peter's, like this, to me, it speaks to me in this really profound way as a person who doesn't have a religion but likes to consider that they have a little bit of faith.
Yeah, and plays into the into Andy Kaufman, as kind of a figure who is really interesting. Like even if he doesn't work for you, like as a figure, he undeniably is important, but also feels important and unique, and feels representative of themes.
Yeah.
Like in a real way.
Yeah, like he was a person that fed and created, and was fed by uncertainty. Right. Like, his entire act was trying to decide whether or not he was for real.
Yeah. I love this song. I love the music video, which is just them, kind of going around like them in the desert going to this truck stop where R.E.M. kind of hang out.
Yeah. It's Michael Stipe walking along singing, and then you have this kind of very on the nose imagery that goes along with it, like images of these board games and stuff that they're playing. Bill Berry picks Michael up in his big rig, and they go to this bar where everybody's mouthing along to the songs. Mike Mills is playing pool, and Peter Buck is tending bar. It's a really good video.
Yeah, really good video, really, really excellent song. Yeah. Like I said, my favorite song on the record that I'm not going to put in our consideration because it feels obvious, but not because it's not my favorite song on the record.
Yeah. I'll just like talking about this musically as well. So the chorus is a really interesting chord progression, but like the verse, they came on it because so it was Bill Berry who discovered this when he was playing guitar, and then he was fingering a C chord, and then he swung around to reach.
Who's C chord?
Thank you. He was making a C chord, and then he turned, and then he reached for a beer, and he slid up to the third fret, turning that C into kind of like a weird augmented D. And they're like, oh, like that slide is actually really cool, and that ended up forming the foundation for the song. And that is a real fun move to do. In fact, I work that into. It's not a C to a D, but it's a similar construction, I think, with a capo in the theme song for this show.
Yeah, it's a neat song musically. It has a lot of different parts and everything, but the parts are not they're music like distinct from one another too. Which is something that lends to it having kind of a complicated composition, which is one of the things I don't like about this album is the lack of that feeling.
Yeah.
To me, like, I love this song. What a good name for that. Later we'll talk about the movie when it comes out. That they did the soundtrack for and everything. But this became kind of, additive and respectful and important to the Andy Kaufman like kind of mythos.
Yes.
So after it comes Night Swimming, another single from like this album is half singles. There's six singles on this song of 12 albums.
It's
like
ridiculous.
Pretty bonkers.
Yeah. Well, they started like trying to wring singles out of this stone.
Yeah. Yeah. Or I mean, things like some things just kind of charted. I think that there's probably a little bit of cart before the horsism in it, where like, non single charting songs are always interesting to me. And I think that happened with this album a little bit too. But so much so they ran out of B-sides eventually.
Yeah.
Like not all these things have unique B-sides. This is a very direct and simple song.
Yeah.
That like I think this is very pretty. But like it doesn't, I would never say it's like my favorite R.E.M. song or one of my favorites.
Yeah.
Like
it used to be an object of ridicule for me. I've come around on it. Just because it is so saccharine. I think my estimation of the song is like grown along with my appreciation for Mike Mills, because this is so much his jam.
Yeah.
As composing the piano part for it. But like, I don't know, like it was an object of derision, but also like I'm kind of affectionate of that, because like we would sing it when me and my high school friends went up to Lake Erie and swam at East Harbor, like as the sun was going down, we would just sing "Night Swimming Deserves." Like we would just all over the place. Like, so in a weird tongue-in-cheek way, we were making fun of it, but also it was very much a part of our experience as well.
Yeah. It's like, it's good. It's like, it's very pretty and it's good. And it's very just like, oh, this is about sneaking off to the swimming hole and skinny dipping.
Yeah.
And, it's kind of like all there on the tin.
Yes.
And
it's, I'm not against this being this direct, because it is frivolous. Whereas Everybody Hurts is direct about a very serious thing.
Yeah. This is just, it's almost like a diary entry.
Yeah. It's a nostalgia, right?
Yeah. And kind of musically, it is a really nice piano part. I think that this could be like, a little bit less middle of the road for me if it were shorter again.
Yep.
All the songs being a little bit too much, but everybody kind of turns in good performances here, if not great. Like piano line is great. The vocals are good. It is a good song. And I feel very similarly about the next song too.
Yeah.
About Find the River.
Yes. Find the River, I think, is held together and made kind of not transcendent, but like it is definitely lifted by the presence of that melodica.
Yeah. Which I'm always happy to hear a melodica.
Yeah.
And this is a dynamic, interesting kind of melody too. Find the River is good.
Yeah.
It's still like down tempo and long. But it's a little bit less so. I think this is actually a really good album closer.
Yes.
For them, like this feels like this only has like one possible place. It could be on the album, and this is where it's at.
And it's an appropriate closer for this particular album as well.
Yeah. I don't have tons more to say about it. Like it's good. It's like kind of like cheesy and kind of hopeful sounding.
Yeah.
At parts, like there are parts with like some like real cheesy little like instrumental fills that happen between lines.
Yeah. There's some very cheesy like lyricism going on here too. The ocean is the river's goal.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. You just said about to write a song about water, didn't you?
Yeah. It's they're back on their water tip.
Yeah.
So I don't have tons to say about it, though. It kind of leaves me not cold, but just kind of like leaves me lukewarm a little bit.
Yeah. It's like a lot of the album. Like it definitely encompasses a lot of my feelings about it, which are like, I like this more than I remember liking it. Because mostly this is one of those albums that I've gone back in mind for singles.
I liked it a lot more when I was younger. Like I liked this album a lot when it came out. It was one of the first tapes I bought. Not the first tape I ever had, but one of the first tapes I purchased like with my own money and stuff, and really loved it. And going back and listening to it, I like it a lot less. It's still kind of like I went through an arc where I was like, yeah, this is like a 9. And then thinking about it, I was like, oh, it's like a 6. And I come back to it. It's like, oh, this is like a 7.
Yeah.
This is a real average R.E.M. album for me. The highs are good. Like the highs are very high. But it just has so much stuff that just feels samey and middle of the road.
Yep.
And it's pretty hard.
Yeah.
Hard for me to get passionate about it. Like I don't feel passionate about it.
Right.
Let's do highs and lows. So if you have to pick, so Man on the Moon is both of our highs. What is your second high?
My second high would have to be Sidewinder Sleeps Tonight.
Okay. That's that's good.
Yeah.
I like that. And I would do Try Not to Breathe, but I love both those songs.
Yeah, like my other one would have to be Try Not to Breathe. Like, I think that, Drive definitely deserves an honorable mention among the honorable mentions. But, like, in terms of one that I could just listen to out of the blue, that kind of matches... Like Drive, you have to kind of be in the mood for to appreciate. You have to have a particular ear for it on that particular day. Whereas the Sidewinder Sleeps Tonight, I think, is satisfying enough on a broad enough level, and is like put together in a really thoughtful way that like you would not think for how goofy it is.
Yeah. I can get on board with that. I would say Try Not to Breathe, but I feel very good about Sidewinder Sleeps Tonight.
Yeah.
And then as far as like bad songs, it's like, I really, really hate Ignoreland, but I might, just to switch it up, might give that to New Orleans Instrumental #1 for being worthless. Like literally having no value.
Yeah, so. like New Orleans Instrumental #1. Like, I don't care if it lives or dies. Like, that just falls beneath it. Like, if I have to cast my flaming sword into one of these, it will be Ignoreland.
Yeah. I guess I deleted both of them off Apple Music so they don't show up in my pleasure listening. Like, I listened to them a bunch, the album, because I've been preparing for this recording session for longer than I should have. Like, I was I need to feel like I'm doing homework. So like, so put this on, and I just listened to the whole album a bunch of times, and I was just like, okay, now what's going to stay for just fun? Mm-hmm. And both those were cut.
Yeah.
So. But
yep.
Yeah, it's good. I think that part of the reason why I feel so lukewarm on it too is because of the reputation as like the greatest thing ever. Mm-hmm. I'm not being reactionary, but like if in a vacuum, if I knew nothing about what any other people, if I wasn't reacting to like, listen, this is the best R.E.M. album, fella, then maybe I wouldn't feel so like strongly. No, it's not. Like this very strong, like, are you crazy? Like, man, have you heard Reckoning? Like, have you heard New Adventures in Hi-Fi? Like, there's just like, I don't have that feeling.
Right.
Or I maybe wouldn't have that feeling in that case.
Mm-hmm.
So
it's, I think I might be a little bit more charitable to this, or a little bit more positive on it if it wasn't just a symptom of them kind of settling into a groove, like the logical resting place after Green and Out of Time. Like, Green and Out of Time are both very weird albums. Like, Green being surprisingly good on a re-listen, and Out of Time having a really good second half. They have enough inconsistencies to say, like, hey, they're trying a bunch of crazy stuff. Here, they are operating with a confidence that, like, hey, this is the kind of thing that we've decided we're really good at making. And I think that Michael Stipe is, like, working lyrically very well outside of, your Everybody's Hurt and your Ignorelands.
Yes.
Like there are moments where this soars, but otherwise it feels like strangely complacent, especially, hot on the heels of stuff that came before it,
Strangely complacent is a good way to put it.
Yeah.
So let's get into some kind of B-sides and also rans and such.
Yes.
Here, just to kind of round things out. The fan club's still going strong, which means we have some good and some bad things popping on out of that. One of the weirdest things to come out of it is this song called Where's Captain Kirk?
What the fuck is happening here, Gary?
Yeah, this is another punk song. Like, they're always covering these real legit punk bands like Mission to Burma and Television. And this is Spiz Energy, which I've never heard of before.
No.
It sounds fucking gross. Like, it sounds like something that Dr. Strangelove would warn you, like, not to give up your Spiz Energy or else the communists. And it's a song about Captain Kirk.
Uh-huh.
It doesn't sound like R.E.M. Like, I know it's R.E.M. Mm-hmm. Like, I've verified it because the YouTube that says it does not sound like R.E.M.
No,
production or vocals or anything.
And you listen to the original and like, oh, well, these are obviously different, same song, but like, different performances. But they are definitely working very close to the Spiz Energy space.
Yeah, it is in the Spiz Energy space, which sounds like a StarCraft 2 or Star Control 2 kind of thing to look out for.
Yeah.
They did a couple more Christmas things because that's the thing that makes every once in a while I'm like, man, I wish that I wish I had been on part of that fan club, and then no, I didn't need to get our Christmas record once a year.
No, especially not with like drunken and sloppy versions of Silver Bells and Christmas Time is Here.
Yeah. It's real weird that this was pressed to vinyl. Like that's such a mark of permanence.
Yep, and prestige.
Yeah, and it's just like the
Winged Mammal theme It's fine. It's like a very, like, it's more cinematic than they usually do, but it's like a piano and organ instrumental.
Yeah. It sounds very, I used to have a new wave tape that I listened to all the time called Hemispheres. And it sounds a lot like that to me.
Yeah.
There's this like honking, there's this harmonica line in it that comes in at certain points that's just like very silly. But yeah, it's not unpleasant. It's just like a weird, instrumental.
Yeah.
Kind of upbeat. Slightly more interesting is It's a Free World Baby. Which is on some soundtracks. I think this is on the soundtrack to Friends. Possibly. I think it got brought back up for that. Like I remember having the soundtrack to Friends that they released, the tape, because it had, I think it had this, it had Toad That Sprocket song, who I liked a bit at the time, and has a Good Hootie and the Blowfish song in it as well. And I was 14 or whatever.
No, it's fine. No, I understand. I was alive in 1993 and had like 2 years in a heart.
Agnostic. Yeah. Yeah. But this song was on it, and I like this song. For me, this is like a better version of Fretless almost.
Yeah.
Just kind of like it has this kind of thing that happens before the chorus, like this real fun kind of bass climb that takes the actual like tempo of climbing stairs to me, like an intentional like ding 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 ding. Like I like it.
It's like a slow walk almost. Yeah. I like the rhythm, like the actual like drum part in it as well. It's like strangely at the forefront, and it's also like halting and weird in a way that you just don't see on an A side.
Yeah, it's a real like the verses are very strange and kind of experimental, and then the choruses kind of become kind of more standard. But I like this song quite a bit.
Yeah.
They covered for a benefit thing. They covered a Richard Thompson song called "Wall of Death."
Yeah,
which I like quite a bit.
Yeah, this is good. This is outside of Man on the Moon, kind of the most Mike Mills that we get to hear. Just because it's this guitar ballad with these really tight harmonies on it. So you get to hear it's almost like Mike Mills is sharing top billing on the vocals.
Yeah. This is really nice. I don't know Richard Thompson.
Neither do I.
Very well, but this song is about like carnival rides. It's like the Wall of Death is a carnival ride. And I like it a lot. Like this is a sweet song, and is catchy and good about riding that thing. I think this deserves a place. If you're R.E.M. fan, you should check this out. As well as I'm going to skip the next one just to make a segue.
Yeah.
The Robin Hitchcock cover they do of Arms of Love. I really like Robin Hitchcock. And this is a very, very sweet Robin Hitchcock song that is the B-side of, I think, Man on the Moon.
Yep. No. The organ in this is really like kind of baller.
Yeah. And it's a real basic song construction. It feels very standard. But it's got very sweet, like kind of like I keep saying sweet. These kind of very like charming backup vocals as well.
Yeah. It gives them room to play.
Yeah.
New Orleans instrumental too. Yep.
Yeah, it's that again. This is also, they went and did a kind of a famous live TV performance where they did the U2 song One, along with U2, which is a song that a lot of people really love. I've always thought is really overwrought and kind of shitty, but they sang it.
Yeah.
They also somewhere around here, and I sent this over to the notes. I apologize for sending over the song stuff kind of disorganized. We can talk about it. So if anyone's wondering like why we're not talking about the Unplugged performance, which happened around here, like a couple years, let's talk about that a little bit during the answer bag.
Yes.
During Death Letter Office 2.
Yeah, that'll be after the New Adventures in Hi-Fi.
Yeah. So if anyone's wondering about that, but we will talk about that. We'll talk about their Trogs cover and all that stuff.
Yeah.
A little bit more because it's an interesting performance at the very least. And we could actually probably do, because they did that later one as well.
Yeah.
Like just talk about them generalities. I don't want to do song by song, but
no.
Yeah.
Yep. They had a demo called for the Fruity Organ song or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, just Fruity Organ. The beginning of it sounds like Dead-Eye Dick. That like she's a new wave girl, don't like
Yeah.
She don't eat meat, but she sure like the bone.
Okay, that's pretty good.
That's in that song. Jenny Plodden has done that at karaoke before, and it's like there's some waja to that. Like it's kind of hard. The lyrics of that are very very rough.
Yeah.
But it's funny. I love this because R.E.M. can't not. Like they can't make something sound serious. Like it has to turn into like an R.E.M. ass chord progression. So this starts off with them doing this kind of silly circus thing, and then turns into like a kind of a high drama R.E.M. chord progression.
Yeah, it's just it's 2 out of 5 chords are going to be minor because why not?
Yeah, because that sounds good. And then weirdly, I think this might have been part of the last record, but we might have missed it. A song called Chance, which is pretty unusual. This kind of electronic instrumental thing with the real mechanical that he kind of sings over. There's a part in this song where he literally goes, okay, this is getting tedious. Like in the lyrics and the performance.
I like this read to me as like overtly antagonistic. And I was having none of it.
Yeah, it's pretty hard to want to listen to Chance. Chance. Like it is it's very strange. And not particularly good.
No. So you mentioned the weird version of Starmy Kitten, which was on an album that I owned, actually.
Yeah, I had that too. The X-Files.
Yeah. Songs in the Key of X. I got it for, there's a really good, Gary Newman cover that the Foo Fighters did.
Yeah, that's great.
Down in the Park. Down in the Park is really good. They're like the Foo Fighters.
That's a great song anyway, but the Foo Fighters version is very good.
Yeah. But I got this. Also the Nick Cave one is pretty good as well. But no, they did a version of Starmy Kitten with William S. Burroughs, and I have no idea what the fuck is going on.
It's somehow slower. Like the music is actually slower, and I don't know if that's because like William S. Burroughs couldn't keep up with the blistering pace of Starmy Kitten. Like it's a thing you listen to once. Like you're not going to sit down and listen to the William S. Burroughs version of that.
No,
where it's just because he doesn't sing. Have we lost our? It's just him. It's just kind of like whiskey and razor blades like tumbling out of his mouth. It's not particularly good. It's just novel. And it's so weird. That's like, oh, that's a piece of X-Files merchandise. Very, very strange.
Has nothing to do with anything.
No. So that's it for Automatic for the People. An album we both are okay with.
Yeah. Like this is, I don't know. I would say, what is it like third quadrant, something like that. Yeah. That sounds about right. It's just like, it's okay. I feel fine harvesting it for singles. Yep.
So if you, we'll be back in 2 weeks talking about Monster. If you like this show, the most direct thing you can do to support it is go to patreon.com/Duckfeed.tv. We've announced a bunch of changes for that will take place on July 1st. And you should check them out. You should check out our new milestone goals and new rewards and see if there's anything that strikes your fancy.
Yeah. We worked very hard on that. I know that is not usually like a reason to care about something, but I say that only to say we put a lot of thought into trying to make something that people would like, and to make changes that we felt were constructive.
Yeah. Hopefully that works. Hopefully you do find them constructive and appealing.
Yeah. So as we kind of alluded to during the episode itself, we have another listener mail episode, another Dead Letter Office coming. Not about the actual episode. We're going to have to talk about what we name those. We're recording that a little bit earlier than you would think. So if you have any questions or thoughts about R.E.M. albums, let's say up through New Adventures in Hi-Fi, go ahead and send those our way. Go to Duckfeed.tv/contact and send them in. That was a lot of fun when we did it last time. Not a lot of people listen to this show, but the people who do are really engaged and like talking with us, and we like hearing it. So that'll be, we'll be recording that sometime in late June. Watch our social media, on Twitter at Duckfeed.tv, for like the absolute deadline for that.
Yes. Yeah. And then ratings, reviews, things like that, telling your friends about it are always useful. So don't stop doing that if you're doing it, and start doing it if you're not.
Yeah.
And I think that's about it. So, until next time, it is the end of the show as we know it.
And we feel fine.